All right, it's 6 o'clock. I'd like to call the order the Hopkinton Town Council Budget Workshop of February 22nd, 2021. To order with a moment of silence and a salute to the flag. Ms. Scott, if you could start us off.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the flag
of the
of the United States of America, and to the
to
republic
the
for
republic
which it
for
stands,
which it stands,
one nation,
one
under
nation,
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
with liberty,
and justice for all.
justice. All right, excellent. So, Brian, I know last week or at the last meeting there, I just allowed you to kind of go through and kind of take control of the meeting and kind of go step through each department. I like the way that worked. I want to continue to do it that way. I think that's the best way to do it. So,
Okay. All right, so if
whenever you feel like taking over, have at it.
all right, sounds good. So first up tonight is the land trust. And just to give you a little history on the land trust, we used to have it in our operating budget under boards and commissions. And I'd say like 4 or 5 years ago, it got moved out into the CIP. So if you guys open up the CIP document, you'll see a line item in there for the land trust. On the summary page, you'll see that there's no cost in the current year because the cost actually comes from the operating budget. It comes out of the town clerk's budget. So what happens is when she collects revenue for, I believe it's what, Lisa, maybe you can help. It's real estate stamps, or I'm sorry, what is
Yeah,
the
real estate conveyance tax stamp.
Yep. So when she collects that revenue, generally that money gets allocated to the land trust until their annual allotted amount is fulfilled. And at that point, she would keep the rest of that revenue. So in the CIP, it looks like there's no cost to the town, but it's really just a reduction of revenue. So we budget $15,000 less in revenue expectations in the town clerk's revenue line to fulfill that commitment to the land trust. So that's how it's been done. Now I know Marilyn's on the line. They asked for $15,000 this year, which is what they've been getting. It's kind of, I think there was 1 year they got 10. Last year, I believe they got 15, and they asked for 15 again, and that's what we budgeted this year. So we were able to give them the amount they asked for. But with that being said, we can let Marilyn maybe say a few words and discuss what that money's being used for, and maybe give you a little background on some of the projects they have going on. Marilyn, did you want to unmute yourself? Is it *6?
Yes. Phone number 6691. If you could just.
This is Liz Monty. It's not Marilyn, so I'm not sure if Marilyn's on the call.
She is. I see her.
Okay. I'm going to mute myself again.
So yeah, I'm
not sure. Do you know her phone number?
she's got her hand raised.
Are you sure? I thought that was Anthony.
She just raised it. It says Marilyn next to her name.
Okay, I see it. Yeah, excellent. Marilyn, if you could just state your name for the record, please.
Okay, how's this?
There you go.
This is different than running the meeting.
Yes.
Getting used to it. Yes, I'm Marilyn Grant, and I am the chairperson of the Land Trust. And I guess Brian's given me an opportunity to say a few things about what we have going on.
Sure, yeah, you had asked for 15,000 this year, and I think maybe it'd be helpful for the council to know, where that money's going and what it's being used for.
Okay, I had provided two things to Lisa last week to give to everyone, which I hope you've gotten. One has an overview of our properties and things that we're currently working on, and some of the other relationships that we have, such as with our Friends Group and the Conservation Commission and such. So if you've had a chance to look at that, that tells a lot. The other document that I provided is I try to, and this is not easy for me because I'm not a budget person, but I try to set it up so that it looks like the town budget, so that you see what we budgeted, what we actually spent, and for this current fiscal year, what we budgeted, and the year-to-date 12/31. And then the final column is what we're asking for. So we have 4,000 for mowing, just kind of, we may have another spot that needs to be mowed, and also just anticipating that our contractor may increase his fee, which he did 2 years ago. Trail construction and maintenance is the biggest, well, one of the biggest categories. And currently we have a small parking area on Mechanic Street, which is associated with the accessible trail that's under construction. We had a really serious problem with it right after. I mean, it was almost completed and we got a big washout. So we're going to have to pay some extra to get that part repaired. And we have a parking lot on Tomquag Road, another property that needs a little more work, and some gates to install to keep vehicles from going down some of the old Woods Road access roads. And we expect to be closing on a new property by October. And there may be some work that we want to start getting done there. Professional fees, we're talking about engineering or appraisals, things like that. Under operating expenses, administrative services is Christine Anderson, who does record keeping and all kinds of stuff. She helps me out so much. And you might notice that the year to date is only at 4,100, but she was extremely ill last year and was not able to work for us for a while. So she's back on track. So we've still asked for the same amount in our budget. Legal fees covers the attorney who writes purchase and sale agreements. He'll do all the work that's related to the closing on this property that we're working on. And the others are small items. We have a website, pay someone to maintain that. We pay for the Rhode Island Land Trust Council, which provides all kinds of support and workshops for land trusts throughout the state. And overhead, I have not put in for paper or ink for my printer for ages, but that's what that $100 in there for a little reimbursement. And that shows the proposed budget part. The revenue we have, first item is the Rhode Island Foundation, which is an endowment that was established by our former member, Ed Wood, but a few years ago. The second one, agricultural leases. We have 3 different farmers and we lease property to them for hay and corn growing. Southern Skies Solar, I know, is a topic that often comes up because it seems like we're getting a really super handout. It's essential at this point. We certainly couldn't operate on just 15,000 from the town. But that was an agreement we worked out with a developer wanted to, we discovered we had an easement on the property that they wanted to do their solar project on. So we negotiated with them so we could move the easement and allow them to build the solar. The problem we ran into is that our lawyer said, you haven't used this easement, so ultimately they could just take it from you. So we figured we'd get to work and see if we could get some benefit from it. And the final line is the 15,000 that we're asking for from the town.
Okay, great. Should we open it up for some questions? Does anyone on the council have any questions for Marilyn while we have her here?
Hey, Brian, it's Councilor Gary. No, but I definitely concur what she's talking about on the new Tom Cog property. Definitely looks good, but the stuff she wants to do, I concur with it.
Okay. All right, so.
Brian, this is Bob Marvel. Just a really quick question for Marilyn.
Sure.
On the item of the legal fees, I was just curious if that budgeted item was in anticipation of the closing cost fees and things like that, because that's quite a bit higher than what was last year.
Yes, that
So,
is. I looked back at closing at legal costs for two other properties in the past, and one was 3,500 and the other was about 2,000.
Okay.
So I figure that's a good guess. Projection.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? I have no questions.
I'm good. Scott?
I'm all set. Thanks, Marilyn, for your occasional contact and for your service to the town. And I'd say years ago, Marilyn and I
Thank
actually
you.
served on a town council together. I served with both her and her husband Mal at different times.
Yep, I've known Scott for a long time.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Excellent.
Thanks, Marilyn.
Yes, thank you, Marilyn.
Okay. Thank you all. I may see you in the near future because I'm up. Good evening. Have a good workshop.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, guys, so next up would be planning. Planning is going to be on page 23 or 22, 23. And I'm pretty sure Jim is in attendance.
Yep, I see Jim right there. If Jim can just raise his hand, I will unmute him. Oh, looks like he's ready to go. Jim Lanfear, are you there, Jim Lanfear?
Jim Lanfear, town planner, is here.
Excellent.
Hey, Jim.
Hey, Brian.
Okay, guys, so the first page, page 22, this is the salaries and benefits page. So I guess we'll just continue what we did last workshop. Do you guys have any questions on this page? All right, if not, we'll move on to the actual budget page 23. The first section, compensation and salaries. You know, we talked about the contract being up for negotiations this year, and we put a placeholder. We also talked about the projection of 6% on medical and 3% on dental, and the decrease in our pension rate. So those are really all the components that change that top section. But if anybody has any questions. All right, next section, services. Does anybody have any questions on the dues and fees? Okay, supply, maintenance, and operation. Any questions there?
No.
Okay. Okay, how about revenue? Any questions on revenue? This comes from land development projects, obviously some solar projects, but we don't anticipate that revenue to continue. But Jim and I discussed at the department head workshop that he thinks with upcoming land development projects that we'll be able to keep that revenue line item steady for the upcoming fiscal year.
Excellent.
All right. So if you guys are all set, any questions before we let Jim go?
I should probably tease Jim. Jim, I've known him for years, and how many years have you worked for the town, Jim?
13.
Yeah, I was gonna tease you a little bit and say, where's the fat in the budget? But you called on so many times for the town council to do its job, and I thank you for your service to the town.
Well, thank you very much. I love the town of Hopkinton. I love working for the town. I love the people I work with, and I'm just 100% devoted to it. So that's all I have to say.
So I
Jim?
appreciate that, Jim.
Jim, can you hear me?
Yes, Sharon, I can hear you.
Okay. I wanted to know of that 10.3, how much of it is solar? If any of it is solar.
It is not. As we
Okay.
discussed. Yeah, so like I said earlier, when Jim and I met, he made it clear to me that the land development projects he anticipates picking up, and a couple in the upcoming fiscal year that line item could be held steady.
All right, thank you.
Right, Jim? I'm sorry, I didn't know.
Yeah. No, I think you're right on the money, Brian. As you can see, we're a little, this year here, we're up to 18,000 year to date as of 12/31. That's probably gonna drop down. I think the solar projects are gonna dwindle from this point forward. So we can't really count on that for recurring revenue. But what is picking up is the housing, and I think we're starting to see some major subdivisions, more than 5 lots, and those, when the majors come in, there's a master plan, preliminary plan, and that adds up to several $1,000s for each one of those. So I think it's safe to budget 10.3 like we did, like Brian and I talked about. So
Yeah, Jim, Scott Hurst, do you think that, I know that when people do development, they have to put money into a fund. Do you think that amount is enough?
when they do development, they have to put money into a fund. You mean like a decommissioning for a solar?
No, not decommissioning for solar, but don't they still have to put money if housing development goes in for toward education expenses and things like that?
That's building
yeah.
and zoning.
Impact fee. Yep.
Yeah, that's an impact fee. We'll discuss that in the next in building and zoning.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
How is the thing on solar from your perspective, the revenue?
It's not here.
Okay.
It's, we have several large solar projects in the process of being reviewed right now. They're probably going to have to go through the system, and at some point, again, will it be, it's a question of how much we can get done in the current fiscal year that we're in right now, or a lot of them are going to be probably carried over to the next fiscal year. And so there'll be a split there between the two. But again, I think the solar projects are going to dwindle. There's going to be few in number going forward, especially the way the solar ordinance is going. So, we can't. The planning department can't count on that continuing revenue stream for that. So.
But Brian.
Yep.
I assume then the revenue from solar is going to be like in the tax assessor?
It's
gotta
a
be in there somewhere.
it's a combination. As I said, it's in building and zoning, so we'll discuss that next.
Okay, thank you.
There's small fees. There are small application fees that come in through planning. I shouldn't say small, but there are application fees I would say small in comparison to the building permit fees. But like we said, we've kind of addressed that. We made sure that they weren't in the upcoming budget because we don't anticipate them continuing to come in next fiscal year. So yeah, we'll talk more about solar in the next department in building and zoning.
Thank you.
So I think, Jim, we're all set. Thank you for your help.
Okay, Brian. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Jim.
Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Yep. Good night, everyone.
So as we discussed, I think the next department up is building and zoning, so we can kind of address those questions on solar revenue, pages 20, 21. So page 20 is I'll give you guys a second to get there.
Okay, and let me enter Anthony to make sure Anthony is here.
Yep.
Anthony Santilli, building and zoning official.
Excellent.
Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Anthony.
Okay, great, Brian. Thank you.
All right,
Okay,
guys. So Anthony, I'm just going to walk through the council through the budget, and then we'll just revert. We'll revert to you with any questions we have on specifics.
Okay,
if that's
great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So first page on salaries and benefits. Does anybody have any questions on that? All right. The next page, the building and zoning budget. Now, as you guys know, the first section, we pay as Hopkinton for the total amount of the building officials' wages and benefits, including workers' comp, pension, all those things, and then we get a reimbursement from Richmond. So that's why you see that line there, Richmond reimbursement. So it's split 60-40. So we have him 3 days a week and they have him 2. That's something that the town came up with. It kind of filled a void that both towns had. And it just seemed like the most logical way to go about it. So that's why that looks a little bit different there. But other than that, does anybody have any questions on compensation and salaries?
I'm good. Stop.
Yeah, I have no further question, because I think the salaries are pretty comparable to towns like Hopkinton, size of Hopkinton, I would imagine.
Agreed. Yeah, and that's all done through contract negotiations with the union, local 808. So we do. That's basically how we gauge all of our union employees by like municipalities around us. So moving on to tech services, does anybody have any questions on technical services?
I mean, what is the state fees here? I mean, are those fees we pay, obviously?
So it's a pass through for the town. So we collect the fees and then we pay them out to the state. So that's why we only budget. So if you see below in the revenue section, they offset, the revenue offsets the expense. So for budgeting purposes, instead of showing, if we were to put in, say, for state fees 5,000 and then put budgeted 5,000 of revenue, it would kind of inflate our budget. You know, it'd look like we had a higher budget than we do. So we put those pass-throughs in there as $1, knowing that, you know, that there's no benefit or harm to the town. It's just a pass-through.
Thank you.
All right, so supplies, maintenance, and operations.
Seems pretty lean, so.
Yeah, there's not much. And actually, you're gonna see that with pretty much all the departments we have tonight are, their budgets are pretty
Tight.
slim. All right, so now we'll get down to the building and zoning revenue. And this is where it was a request last year that was kind of denied by the previous council, but I just went ahead and broke out the solar revenue just because I knew there was going to be questions about it and the revenue collected. So this line item here, now I'm going to bring up a page and share a screen with you guys. Just so that you can see this document I'm working off. I know you're all familiar with it. It's a document we put together for, host, can you, Steve, can I allow me to?
Hold on 1 second, let me.
And I know that everybody is on the computer, so I'll kind of talk as to the document in front of us.
Brian, I just made you a co-host. You may be able to do it now.
Okay. All right. So when you look at this document here, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with it. It's been a document we've used for budgeting purposes in the past, and it helps kind of all the department heads stay on the same page as far as, where we are certain timelines of various projects, and kind of just to keep track of all the different projects. So the section that I'd like to focus on tonight for tonight's purposes really is this no zone change needed. These two projects here, this is where that revenue comes from. If you see there, that's 327,000. That's the 15 Frontier Road and the Palmer Circle. Those were the projects that we anticipated still getting through because they've already submitted master plans. And I mean, I'm not sure what your thoughts are on that. After discussing with the department heads, those were the only two that we felt still had probability or a high probability of going through because they're where they are currently in the process. These other projects, we've kind of just, discounted them because we don't think they have a very high probability of going through. So if you see those two projects there, that's where you come over. If you go back to the budgeting document, that's where that revenue of 327,000 comes in.
Brian,
so
I don't,
Yep.
I'm not, if you're looking at the Town of Hopkinton Solar Project list as of November 2nd, is that what you're looking at?
Nope, this is of February 5th. This was updated for this year's budget.
I don't think I got that, did I?
Nope, probably not. This is an internal document that we use for budgeting. I can certainly provide it. Sure.
Please do.
Yeah, so like I said, these are the two projects that we're really discussing on the document is a 15 Frontier Road and Palmer Circle, and those are the permit fees that would show up in the revenue for this upcoming year. Now that revenue, when you look in the budget, now the reason I want to really discuss this briefly from a budgeting standpoint, this is, a good thing to have revenue coming in. Obviously, 327,000 is very helpful for the town, but this becomes very problematic. This is a one-time source of revenue. So you generally don't want to have one-time source of revenue, especially this large in our operating budget, because what happens is this builds a structural deficit for next year, right? So next year, when that revenue line item is zero, we're going to have to make up $327,000 in revenue or cut $327,000 in expenses. Somehow we have to come up with that loss in order to just get back to the tax rate we're at this year. So with that being said, the way I like to handle one-time sources of revenue and the best budgeting practice, the way you handle those is with a one-time expense, right? So next year when that revenue goes away, if you use it on a one-time expense, the expense goes away too, and that eliminates that structural deficit. So that will play in with the CIP. So we'll talk about that a little bit further when we discuss the budget in totality, because I've actually put the CIP budget in there with no use of fund balance. So there's currently a CIP budget of 237,000, right? So in theory, next year, if this revenue goes away, which we anticipate it will, that CIP expenses are one-time expenses. So we could essentially just do away with our CIP and we wouldn't have a structural deficit. Obviously, we hope that we don't have to do that because we'll have ongoing projects in the town, but hopefully, you know, we'll see maybe an increase in net assessed values or in the tangible revenue from some of these projects going online that will be able to fund those CIPs next year. So I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of a background on that, because this was probably the most challenging thing about this entire budget, was how to handle this one-time source of revenue, because I understand, you know, budgeting enough to know that next year this could create a real problem, because if, say, Charahoe comes and we have a $500,000 increase next year, and then we have a loss of revenue for $327,000, that's an $800,000 hit to our budget in one fiscal year. That exceeds our 4% cap. So you can get yourself in a really bad financial situation with these one-time sources of revenue. You know, not to say that, you know, revenue is obviously a good thing. It just has to be handled prudently so that we don't get ourselves in a really bad situation next year. You know, again, we don't want to see a huge spike in tax rate next year because of this loss of revenue. So I'm trying to anticipate that ahead of time by countering that with that CIP budget. You know, the big item specifically really is that the 1904 building, you know, 165,000, that's not going to happen again. So right there, we know we've already kind of eliminated half of our structural deficit for next year, because that expense will go away, as will this revenue. So I hope that was clear. It's not the easiest concept to grasp, but I hope I did an okay job of explaining it.
Brian?
Yep.
Okay, so I have that Town of Hopkinton solar project list as of November 2nd, 2020, which is what the list that the former town council presented in November to show the benefits of the solar project.
Sure.
And in that, at the top part under town approved project, if you look in the next to the last column on the right, where it says tax total increase tax revenue, and then the starting year is the last column. So and so if we have all, let's see, I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Yes. So
15 projects
let me just answer. That are through FY20 through FY22, and two of the two big ones, you know, that's most of the farm stuff, but there's Sure.
two big ones. One is Alton Bradford Road. They're expecting $118,731.
Sure.
Maybe.
So I can explain that to you.
And then the Main Street, 310 Main Street, which I forgot what it used to be called, but anyway, that's $108,239. So the way that list is presented, you get the feeling that you're going to get this money every year.
You are.
And so why aren't you counting the $118,731 from Alton Bradford and the $108 239 from 310 Main Street.
Okay, so just, all right, so if you give me a second to explain that. So that revenue all shows up under the tax revenue. So that the building permits that we're discussing show up under the operating budget under building and zoning revenue. The revenue
Okay.
here, this is an increase in tangible tax. See, it says increase in the land assessment, tangible tax. So that's all tax revenue. That's an increase in tax revenue. That's not an
Okay.
increase to budgetary revenue. So that wouldn't show up under a specific department, but that revenue does come in, and you will see that in our operating budget. So that will show up under tax revenue, and you'll see later on, we can discuss it tonight as well. I can show that at the end when we kind of go wrap this up and aren't doing the specific departments. I can show you exactly where that revenue came in.
Okay, that's all I need to know. I need to know where it is, and that's all.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is on this 327 is only under building permit fees.
Correct.
That cost. Okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. So any other questions?
So my questions, I understand these are anticipated fees as, these projects with master plan approval and stuff, or they're working on it. So if these projects for some reason pushed off, kicked on the road somehow, some way, how does that offset with our CIP budget? That kind
All
of
right.
just,
Sorry, because you cut out for a second there. Can you just say that one more time?
sure. Yeah, no, I'm saying that these projects, the 327 with building permit fees, I mean, those obviously aren't written in stone, right? I mean, those aren't like guarantees that this revenue is coming in, right?
No,
One-time stream.
and if you guys think that it's not going to come in, we certainly have to take that revenue out. Absolutely, we should not have. I was with my discussions with building and zoning and planning. They were under the impressions that those two projects were far enough along that they thought they were going to get approved. But if you guys feel otherwise, then we would have to certainly take that out, which would have to be that revenue would have to be offset by an increase in tax rate.
So with that being said, and I mean, the administrative
You
body
cut out
who's
again.
going to, I'm assuming is with Jim, right? I mean, the administrative body who's going to approve these projects is going to, I mean, Jim Lanfear would have some more answers to these, right?
Yeah, and that's that's who I discussed this with when, we went through this, that worksheet that I put together. I brought that, I sent it to building and zoning. They updated their portion. Jim updated his sections, and then we sat together and discussed the probability of these projects. So those two projects, I wasn't, to my knowledge from them, they were going to be most likely high probability of approval. So that's why we went ahead and put that revenue in there. But if that revenue, if the council feels that there's going to be something that's going to prevent those projects from actually being approved, then we certainly need to take that revenue out.
I mean, I understand the revenue project on Frontier Road is pretty much, I mean, they're already in a zoning board issue now with work hours and stuff like that, and a couple of screening issues. So obviously they're a lot farther down the road than the Stone Ridge or / Palmer Circle project. So that's just kind of where my concern lies in the no zone changes needed. Know much about, I mean, as far as the particulars with the Stone Ridge project and how far along it is. I mean, I was under the assumption that they did not have their master plan approval yet. So that's why I'm asking these questions.
Yeah, sure. Let me see if we can if Jim is still on the line.
I don't see Jim.
No, okay.
Are there any other counselors that may add to that conversation or have any information in regards to it?
Steve, I was just going to talk about Revity. I thought Revity had gotten, all the way. So I think that Revity, even though they're appealing, they still can work. So I think the 150,000 is reasonable, but I don't know about Stone Ridge.
Hey, Steve, it's Mike.
Yes, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I kind of align with you. I mean, it's, you don't want to put money out there that you're kind of sure we're getting it. We're not really sure. So, I mean, I don't know if Brian can work some of his magic and just maybe table that.
I
until we
don't
have a
mind.
better answer or something like that.
Okay, so we can
I'd like to hear
put
what-
that.
I'd like to hear what Bob, Scott, and Sharon have to say. Yeah, we just don't want to put false numbers out, then all of a sudden both the projects fall flat.
We got to remember, Councilman Hurst, everything now is just discussion. We haven't adopted a budget. We can move these numbers around. So I'm not overly concerned with the numbers at this point. Later on in the process, when we get to adopt the proposed budget for May for the hearing, then we really have to make a decision. But right now, everything should be flexible, and we should be able to change our mind as we think appropriate for the benefit of the town. But I wouldn't sweat it right now on specific numbers.
Steve?
So I think,
Yes, go ahead, Sharon.
Yeah, I think the 150 is still good for Revity, and I would like to have Brian talk one more time with planning and the planning board what they think of Stone Ridge. That's all. I think we can, just keep going. We still have time ultimately to go up or down, but I want him to confirm with planning and the planner that he, whether he thinks Stone Ridge Palmer Circle is going to keep going.
Sure, I'm also in agreement with that. So Brian, with that being said, I would like to have a little more information from Jim, regarding that project. Because I kind of feel like, from what I know about the project, that it's, potentially, obviously still in the works. So, yeah, if we could get a little more information as to his thinking, as to why he thinks that this is going to move forward, in those building permit fees will be available for us.
okay. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my thought process is, the only reason it's in there is because I was informed to put it in there. I don't track these projects as closely as, certainly as planning and as the council. You guys are more involved with these specific projects. It was just in there based on their assumptions of approval. So I'll do some more research on that. And get back to you guys. And I could even ask Jim to maybe attend and talk to you guys a little more in detail on that specific project.
Yeah. 'cause
Sure, I
we're-
appreciate that.
Brian, we're meeting Thursday night too, but I mean, so maybe we can talk about, maybe just have Jim talk to us Thursday night about it.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, I can certainly do that, because that's a big chunk of money that we definitely do not want to have in there if it's not going to come to fruition. And that's going to significantly change this budget. If we have to make up, if that 175,000 comes out of there, the good part is, it eliminates the potential of that structural deficit for next year. But for this year, you're looking at another 18-cent increase to the mill rate for 177,000. So that would put us well over our 4% cap. So the repercussions of that would mean we would have to, we'd have to make some significant cuts, meaning like that 1904 building would have to come out of the budget.
Okay.
But again, I'm all for having the most accurate budget possible. You know, whether it's happening or not, I don't really, I'm indifferent to it. I just want to have whatever's actually going to happen. That's what I want in the budget.
Yeah, Brian Councilman-Hurst, what is the actual proposed Charahoe budget? What does that do to our mill rate? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, of course. So the Charahoe budget of increase of 469 roughly thousand. Let's see here.
That's our portion. Right
That's
now.
46 cents increase to the mill rate. Now, we didn't see an increase that much in our mill rate this year because we were able to offset that with the increase in state aid, this increase in revenue from the solar, increase in revenue on the department levels. So that's why we're not, it's much more, the increase from Charahoe is, would have resulted in a much higher increase. So we would have saw a 46-cent increase. Our proposed increase now is 38 cents. So we were actually able to offset some of that increase and reduce the impact of that increase from Charahoe down from 46 cents to 38 cents. And a good, good chunk was we saw an increase in state aid as well.
Excellent. Yeah, no, so my biggest concern was just obviously we want a budget that's going to reflect obviously what's on on the table. I just wasn't sure if if there were things that were leading Jim to believe that these things were solid in the bag and we could present them. So I just, like I said, want to know his thinking as to why he thinks that we should put this in our line item on our budget. So
Sure.
with that being said,
I did meet with him and discuss this, but I don't want to speak for him, and I don't
Sure,
really remember the specifics. So I'd rather bring him in and have him kind of explain to you his thought process.
and that sounds fine. Thank you.
Okay.
And you are going to give us an updated list, that list?
Sure.
Thank you.
Hey,
Maybe
Brian,
for
maybe,
Thursday.
Brian, maybe you can email it to us all so we could all get a copy of it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on building and zoning?
Brian, Bob Marvel here. Just a quick question, just from my own understanding. Looking back at the state fees and the radon, I'm assuming is also a pass-through.
Yep.
When I look at the revenue and compare it to the budget items, the numbers are actually a little bit different. And I was just curious why the numbers were different.
It's a timing. It's generally a timing thing. Or it is a timing issue because we collect the revenue. We actually get reimbursed for that revenue. So a lot of times you'll see where it'll just be a matter of usually the last month of the year, it'll fall into the next fiscal year. So they don't really line up. And that happens quite a bit in these, throughout the budget and various items where, especially the reimbursement type items where, June, July months, they'll tend to be a lag.
Okay.
So sometimes the reimbursements may take on certain line items a couple months. So that's basically what it is. So, in an ideal world, it would be dollar for dollar, but just due to the timing of it, sometimes they cross over fiscal years.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Brian, I have a hand up. I'm just gonna see
Sure.
who this is. This is Joe. Joe, you have the floor.
Hi, good evening. It's Joe Moreau, Old Depot Road. I just had a couple of questions for Marilyn, and I thought Brian was not paying attention to me because he thought I was a Red Sox fan, but he knows I'm a Yankee fan, so I'm only picking on you, Brian. I just think, unless I missed it, I just think it would be helpful if we had the same spreadsheet that Marilyn was referring to, because I'm just looking at the CIP, with the 15,000 revenue, 30,000 total. And she mentioned an easement for solar, and I was concerned to find out what project was she talking about, because the other question I had for Marilyn was, are there any other solar projects? Because typically you'll hear the developers mention about donations to the land trust. So, it's not that important, but just as a clarification, it would have been nice to be able to look at her budget. The other point I want to mention, it's difficult sometimes when we just refer to them as solar projects. I know Brian didn't mention, and I would not expect him to be as familiar with it, so it's not a criticism for Brian, but the two projects on Palmer Circle, I'm assuming one was Stone Ridge, and Steve mentioned that, and there's a smaller project on Palmer Circle also. I was confused when I saw the revenue of $327,000. So I had called Sherry in Building and Zoning, and she was kind enough to explain to me that it's basically what we said tonight. It's the permit fees. But I think going forward, it would be helpful when you look at the line 3,400 revenue solar, if it said permits, and if it's possible to list those projects so we know. My bottom line is I'd hate to see anything that is due to the town to fall through the cracks. I know everyone does a great job to track it, but there's a lot of moving parts with these solar projects, and I was still under the impression, I might be wrong, I thought there was still some zoning issues that had to be clarified with this Stone Ridge, and maybe it was clarified, but it just seems kind of vague in some areas, but that's it. That's the only comment I had.
Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
All right, Brian, you can carry on.
All right. So heading back to the budget, next department is tax assessor.
Okay, thank you, Brian.
Oh, sorry, Tony.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Tony,
Yeah,
thank you.
Thanks, Don.
Hey, Brian.
All right, it's pages 10 and 11, tax assessor. So any questions on page 10, wages and benefits? Okay. And you guys are going to find the next couple departments are pretty lean. There's not too much going on, but just we'll go through the normal process and make sure that we address any questions you guys may have. But first section, compensation and salaries. Okay. Services. Next section, services. This is generally the cost of the tax roll from Vision. That's $750. That's the top line item. And then Rhode Island Association of Assessors and the International Assessors Association are dues and fees. Any questions there? Okay. Supply, maintenance, and operations.
Oh, it's pretty good.
Okay. Any questions on revenue?
Brian, can you define what that land use penalty open space is? Although you don't have any, but
Sure.
what was it?
Sure, we'll let Liz do some talking since I've been chatting all night, but she'll give you a good definition of what that is. Generally, it's farm Liz, are you there? Can we unmute Liz? Steve? There we go.
Yes, if she could just put her hand up, or is she on there? Hold on one second. If she could just put her hand up so I can identify her. Okay, I see it. Excellent. All right, Liz, you have the floor. Liz, go ahead, Liz. *6 to unmute yourself.
Doesn't look like she's muted.
No, she's not muted.
No, she's open.
Okay, so my understanding is that it's farmland that was receiving a tax reduction for the use of farmland. And if they break that contract at any point, they have to reimburse the town for the tax benefit they received for being open space. And that's probably not the most detailed description, but that was my understanding of that revenue. So it's very unpredictable. You can see we never budget for it because we never know, if someone who is classified as open space is going to end up developing their property, subdividing their property and breaking that agreement and reimbursing the town. It's really no way to anticipate that.
Do you want to try Liz one more time? You think
Sure. Although now she looks like she
put her hand down?
Looks like she dropped off.
Okay. That's fine.
Okay. Liz, you there? All
Yeah, I'm
right.
so, I don't know, I got bumped off somehow. Sorry about that. I couldn't hear what you were talking about, but I can explain the land use change penalty if that is still.
That's exactly that's exactly the question. Councilwoman Davis wanted to know where the revenue came from for the land use penalty open space.
Okay, that happens intermittently. It doesn't always happen yearly, and the amount is different depending on the situation. When a taxpayer decides to come out of farm, forest, and open space before their 15-year commitment, I have to assess a penalty, and it depends upon at what point they are in that 15 years, what the percent of the penalty would be. So every case is different. This particular year, that penalty was due to a single landowner deciding to subdivide and sell off a piece of her property to a neighbor, and that was before her 15 years was up.
Councilwoman Davis, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay.
You're
All
welcome.
right. Thanks so much, Liz.
Sure.
Liz?
All right. So you guys have any other questions for Liz before we let her go?
I'm good.
Okay.
Councilman
All right.
Hurst is okay.
No
Thanks
questions.
again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz.
All right, good night. Thank you.
All right. So the next department up, tax collection. That's going to be on page 12 and 13. So the next 2 pages. Page 12, any questions on salaries and benefits? Okay, the next page would be tax collection. Any questions on, again, compensation and salaries? Okay, any questions on services? How about supplies, maintenance, and operation? Okay. And then any questions on revenue?
Yes,
Okay.
Brian, do we have, are these tax sales revenues when somebody buys a property? Or is it when somebody buys a town-owned property?
Okay, so the first line item that we're looking at now is just tax collection revenue. And
Okay.
so you're looking at, are you asking about that line item or the tax sales
Yes.
section below?
Say that again?
So below, so there's the tax revenue, tax collection revenue. And then below, there's a section for the tax sale. Right? So my question is, are you asking about the tax collection revenue or are you asking about the tax sale revenue?
Well, it's,
They're two different.
I'm sorry. I'm talking about the tax sale revenue.
Okay, so let's bring in Mary Lynn. She can help walk us through the differences and all the various items that make up the tax revenue.
Mary Lynn
I'm
should
here.
have. Yep, thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so the first one there that Brian was referring to, the tax collector's revenue, where it says it's budgeted for $8,000. What that is that when there's a sale of a property or a refinance of the property, the attorneys have to request what we call a municipal lien certificate, which is just a snapshot of time of what the taxes are, if the taxes are owed or what the taxes are for the year or whatever. And it's a state mandated thing. So we charge $25. That's a state fee and we get to keep it all. So that's what that is. So currently right now, I did print off, I don't know if I brought it home with me or not. Let's see. So as of today, I ran it today, and as of today, we've already accrued $7,654 in this $25 fee that we charge for these certificates.
And the definition of that, you said it was a municipal lease certificate?
Yep.
Lien.
Lien.
Municipal lien. Yeah.
LIEN, municipal lien certificate.
Thank you.
Okay.
And then down below?
That's just, we really don't get any revenue when we do the tax sale. Because at the time of the sale, you know, we get paid the back taxes, of course, or whatever taxes that are out there are owed. And then I have to hire a vendor to do it. So I put all that onto the tax sale. So we don't really collect, except for the back taxes. That rest of it is a wash. Because if I'm billed $100 from my vendor, I collect that $100 for the vendor. And so it turns out to be a wash. So we really don't get any revenue per se from the tax sales itself. Except for just, we are collecting the taxes, which has already been, is what's already been budgeted in. So.
Your vendor, is it a lawyer?
No, she's not. She's been doing tax sales for like over 30 years. She is with a lawyer. She is with a firm. She's just one section of their company, but she's not an attorney. No, the one that I use.
Okay.
So.
All right. Thank you.
And just to follow up on Councilman Marvel's question earlier, that the timing on this is a little bit all over the map, because sometimes it could take a while for people to redeem and pay off the tax sale. So it's not, they usually don't fall in the same fiscal year. But,
Sure,
you know, we recoup 100% of those fees, you know, that's without question. So Joe can sleep easy tonight. We collect all those fees, but it's just not always in the same fiscal year. So yeah, any other questions for Mary Lynn?
Yes. What's the difference between the tax sales revenue and a tax sale redemption? What is the difference?
Okay, so redemption is when, say for instance, a property gets sold at a tax sale. And then, no, I'm having my first tax sale in June, so we'll use that one. So say a property goes up of tax sale in June and I sell it. And in September, the person that, you don't really lose the house at tax sale, they just put a tax lien against the property. So that person that owns the property now has the money to pay it back. So what they do is they contact me and they say, okay, I'm now in position. I want to redeem my property. I want to get it all back to me. And so that's when I go ahead and I get the numbers together. The person that bought it at tax sale gets back every penny that they put out at that time, plus in this particular case, because it's within 6 months, and 10% interest. That goes, which I go ahead and give that all to the homeowner, and he will cut me that check, and then I disperse it out. So that's what it is. It's just when a person redeems the property from tax sale.
Okay,
The
thank you.
homeowner.
All right, thanks so much, Mary Lynn. That was helpful. All right, any other questions for Mary Lynn before we let her go?
I got to do the next one, municipal court.
Oh, that's right. Stick around.
I'm sticking around.
More fun to be had.
Yes.
All right, so let's go to municipal court, which is on page, let's see, 43, 44. All right, any questions on the salaries and benefits? All right. Any questions on the expenses? Okay, any questions on the revenue? So we definitely saw a little bit of a hit due to COVID, but nothing too substantial. But that we weren't
Because
able.
we've done a lot of them. We've done a
I'm
lot
sorry,
of them administratively, meaning that we were given the authority by the traffic tribunal so that we could look at their driving records, and if they could qualify for having a good driving record, they didn't have to come in, we could send them letters, they could send us in, we have an affidavit they got to sign. So which is something we've never been able to do before. So we've been able to do a lot of this stuff administratively to try to keep, we still have a fairly large docket out there that needs to be addressed, because I would like to get the court up and running again. Because some of these are the people that have bad driving records, so they can't use the good driving records. They have to come in front of the judge, whether they're going to plead guilty, take it to trial, whatever they choose to do. We've got about 75-ish cases out there. For us, that's not all that bad, considering that we shut down court last March. So we've handled a lot of this administratively. It's been a lot of work on my clerk. It's been a lot of work on the chief secretary, but the girls have stepped up to the plate and they've done it. So hopefully going forward, can start having court again. We've talked, we've got, we're thinking that we might have to do like a couple of sessions a month to get everything back up to speed. And then, go back to only doing once a month once we're caught up. So.
Okay, any questions?
What will determine when the municipal court will come back?
It's up to my judge and it's up to the town solicitor.
Okay.
Make that decision.
Hey, Brian, it's Mike. Sounds like Mary Lou has a very good handle on this, on what she wants to go forward with. Mary Lynn, thank you for what you do for the town.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, thanks a lot, Mary Lynn. Great job.
Okay, all right.
Have a good night.
You too, yeah, bye-bye.
Okay. Next up would be IT, which we didn't have technology in Hopkinton until a couple years ago. and we're just catching up to the rest of the world. Page 18 and 19. Okay, any questions on the salary and benefits section? Page, I should say. Okay, and the IT department, any questions on compensation and salary?
Brian, I just have one question. So it's a dual-hatted position, GIS and IT?
Current, it was at one point. He covers a lot of the GIS. Yes and no. He covers a lot of the GIS. It all falls under his department, under his responsibility. Some of the stuff is very technical, so we outsource some of that work, which is actually under contract services. There's a small amount. I want to say it's NEGO, I believe is the company that we outsource some of that work to, but he facilitates the process and coordinates everything with them.
Excellent.
And you know, Chris had a couple offers with other municipalities and other job offers, and we really liked what he was doing for the town. So we renegotiated his contract, or I shouldn't say we, the town manager at the time renegotiated his contract to keep him on board in Hopkinton, and I, for one, was glad he did, because I think he's made drastic improvements townwide on all of our infrastructure and technology. So we wanted to make sure we kept him around, and we're glad we did.
Excellent, thank you.
All I can say, Councilman Hurst, for people that don't know, that are listening, that the town of Hopkinton now, the council members have their own town email address. So I just want to point that out. Thank you. And contact the council at towncouncil@hopkintonri.org if you have something to say to us. Thank you.
Okay, so any questions on compensation and salaries? All right, services. How about revenue?
Brian, Bob Marvel, just go
Sure.
back on these services, contract services. That's where the outside contract comes into that.
Yeah, so this line item is one of the larger line items in our budget, and I'll screen share again, and I can also for Sharon, because I know you're not on a computer. I can provide this to all the council members as well. It's a breakdown. So Chris and I, we spend a lot of time on this line item because it is one of the bigger line items, and it consists of, hold on, let me get the document open. I would say like 15 different contracts that we have with various companies. And basically all of the town's technology, any contract we have goes through this line item. So it's not just IT specific. So vision, for example, that's used by the tax assessor and the tax collector, that's all billed and expensed through this line item. Our finance, our accounting system goes through this. The police department, they have Tri-Tech services. There's a list that goes on and on. There's like 15 throughout the town. One of the big portions of this increase was, and we'll talk a little farther after we get through with this department, we'll move to the CIP. We've actually included the new town website, and the maintenance fee is about $3,000 a year for operation and maintenance of that town website. So that's one of the, big portion of the increase. We also saw an increase of 1,200 hours from Vision, 3,000 for the town website, and TriTech went up $750. And we added some services that were really helpful during these COVID times, such as like TeamViewer, which isn't a lot, but certain services like that. So he's able to help people that are either working from home or be able to access people's computers remotely, to try to stop, putting him in and out of everybody's office and being exposed to every department on a daily basis. So we thought it was wise to implement TeamViewer to assist him, or to help him assist other employees without having to go sit at their desk and then, basically going from department to department. So like I said, I can provide you all with the backup, which really gives like a breakdown specifically to the dollar of that $63,000 line item. It has a list of all the contracts, and it has a list, it explains as a description, and it explains exactly what it's for, how long the subscription is for, the time frame, and that should, give you guys a pretty good understanding of what's going on.
Yeah, I think that would be very helpful for us all to know that a lot of that software, those applications are in direct support of other areas of the town. So
yeah, here I can even screen share it now real briefly. Let's see here. So this is what the document looks like, and we update it. So we have police software, municipal court software, tax collection, annual software maintenance from Vision, various items from Vision, CAMA, NEGO, which is the GIS, Viewpoint, which is it's required by the state. It's a state-run software program they implemented. Capture Point, which is the recreation program that helps them collect fees, and collect credit card payments and track them by program. Carousel Industries, that's the police phone system. Syntex Systems, that's for the public works fuel station. Blue Moon, that's our accounting system. Cybershore, that's the police website, email, and spam filter. Topaz Engineering, that's the GIS printer and scanner maintenance. We have, so the list goes on and on. Instead of me going through all those were the big items. Some of the smaller items are, the hosting of the town website. I'm sorry, town email. And then I think we added down here the new town website maintenance and hosting from Civic CMS. So we can talk a little bit. I'll have Chris just talk a little bit more about the new website, because that's a big chunk of our CIP line item. So I'll provide this document to you guys so that you have it, because it is a bigger line item. So you guys will have that information.
great, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. So with that being said, you guys want to move to the CIP section. The CIP line item, the first one, computer replacement. And let's see if I have, I'm sure Chris is always on these calls. Chris, do you want to jump on real quick?
Sure.
So I can show you the individual tab. If you guys have it open, you'll see that we're funding 19,500. I'll give you a little breakdown, and then I'll let Chris explain to you what the various items are and why we need them. So the first one is 2,500, or this is a breakdown of the 19,500. It's 2,500 for a firewall replacement at the police station, 1,500 for a new server at the Crandall House, 2,500 for our continuous computer upgrade town-wide. That's about 5 computers a year. That kind of keeps us from having to go out in 1 year and replace, upwards of 30 computers. We try to incrementally fund that every year so that we can update the most obsolete and oldest desktops in the town. And then the 13,000 is for the new town website, which is with Civic Plus. So Chris, maybe you could just give them a little background into some of those items and why we think they're necessary.
Brian, can I just interrupt with a quick question?
Sure.
On the computer replacement, and this is actually probably a question for both you and Chris. Are our computers purchased or are they leased?
They're purchased.
They're purchased. Have we considered some sort of a lease?
I mean, I'm not opposed to that idea because that keeps the refresh cycle, updated. So I have probably, since I've been here, the 3 years that I've been here, I've only replaced one computer.
Mm-hmm.
So all our computers are at least 10 years old. So, I would certainly explore a lease. Anything to get newer computers in here, but I can talk with Brian about, a leasing option.
It might be something worth looking into because it generally, if you work with a leasing company, they are on a 3 or 5 year cycle that,
yep.
You pick. If it's 3 year, you pick a third every year and you just replace them every year. And it kind of evens out your budget, I think.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
I think if there's some cost savings there, that'd be great. I'd be very curious to see. My inclination would be that it would probably be more expensive, only because in Hopkinton, historically, it'd be a better solution, but probably a little more costly because, like Chris said, our time horizon, with a lease, it's probably, like you said, 3 or 5 years. But in Hopkinton, because we just haven't really had the money historically to really pump into our technical infrastructure and those type of projects, their general, Chris, I think you and I went over this, it was like 7 years is like our refresh cycle. So it's like, I don't think a lease, generally the shelf life for a desktop is 5 years max, right? So we kind of stretch it just because it's just the more affordable way to do it. And we try to really push the dollars as far as we can. But, I think that it would definitely be an upgrade for the town if we got on a lease and had people on new computers every 3 or 5 years, as opposed to 6, 7, or 10 years. Because I think, my biggest concern, I've talked with Chris about this, is always like security, and we don't want to have to deal with any sort of like breach of security. And Chris has been great and keeping on that. And I know you have a lot of work experience with that. That's kind of been like our biggest priority when we do get some funding. And this is probably the most we've ever got or asked for because of the 13,000 for the town website. Generally, it's like 6,000 a year is what we put in there. And that's just like the bare bones, just to really keep things afloat. Like when a firewall expires and is no longer supported, if desktops are just like, done, he'll replace them. But so yeah, I would love to look into it. I think that's a great suggestion, and Chris and I will definitely follow up.
I know that most large corporate entities now do leasing for their computer equipment, but of course you get economies of scale there. So, they keep their prices down, but, maybe there's some sort of a municipal, deal that can be had as well. either at the state or the federal level. I don't know.
Yeah, that's probably, I think you're onto something. Usually we do get better pricing on stuff like this, whether it's like vehicles or, certain equipment. So that's definitely worth looking into.
Hey, Brian,
Yeah.
Brian?
I got the floor, Sharon. I concur with,
Okay.
even in my world, who I work for, every 3 years, it goes back out, you get a brand new one.
Yeah.
So I agree with Bob on what he's saying, but I know it gets expensive and then something breaks and it costs somebody in to fix it, or whatever the case may be, if it's on a lease.
Right.
Over buying it.
The other benefit to a lease, if you go with a larger company, like I don't know what our computer equipment, what brand it is, but a company like Dell, they have leasing options where if you provide them an image, an operating system image, they'll actually provide you with a machine already pre-configured.
Actually, I have
saves-
experience with that in the past working for a school department. We would.
Yeah, it might save you some time and effort.
Yep.
Yeah, that's why the one I'm looking at right now here on the desk is a Dell Latitude. It's a big one.
Yeah. So I'm willing to help if you guys want me to assist in any way.
Sure, that would be great.
All right, appreciate that. Yeah, that's definitely a good thought. And I mean, even if it was like a cost neutral and we could just get better technology into the town and not have 10-year-old computers or 7-year-old computers and get like a whole new inventory of younger, less outdated equipment, that would be great.
Yep.
So,
yeah.
Sharon, did you have a question?
Yes, I didn't write down all of the things that make up the 19.5. I have 2,500 for the firewall replacement at the police station, 13,000 for the new town website. I don't know how much was for the computer replacement, and then I missed one more, I think.
Yep. So it's 2,500 was the firewall replacement. 1,500 was the new server at Crandall House. So right now the whole Crandall House is being backed up on. There's no server there. So and Chris, feel free to step in because
Yeah,
you know way more
there's
about this
there's
than
no
me.
central storage there. Everybody, all their documents exist on their computer, and that's that. So if anything were to ever happen to the hardware, there goes everything. So I would like a central point for data storage where everybody can use it, and then I will back that up locally and to the cloud. So would make me sleep a little bit better at night knowing that if one of those computers goes, that I have a backup plan for that. So it's kind of been it's bothered me a long time since I first started here, that it's basically everybody's computer is just on an island. So the central storage is pretty important to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that includes
How much is the computer replacement?
2,500.
2,500 for the computer replacement.
Yep.
I need some. Oh, I see. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Yep. Yeah. So just to touch on the server at the Crandall House, that is like the town manager's office and his assistant and the rec department. But it could be pretty detrimental to the town if the town manager just lost all of his files. Luckily, our previous town manager printed out everything, so it's all hard copies at this point, but I don't think people would continue to do that in the future. It would all be saved electronically, and it just should be backed up, I think, in my opinion. And that way we kind of have all our bases covered. All the town's computers are backed up on servers, and that way, if anything were to happen, we're protected. So any questions for Chris? Chris, did you want to touch base on the website real quick?
Yeah. So I looked around at other towns, and we are doing probably the most economical way to do it. But our website is, I've heard since I began here that it's not that easy to navigate around. It's not that easy to find something, and it's pretty strict as far as changes go. So it's like, even when I had to make that COVID-19 page, I kind of had to work something that I kind of feel like it wasn't meant to do, where I feel like the new website and the Civic Plus is the one that the majority of the towns in Rhode Island use. I know that Westerly does, Richmond does, North Kingstown, South Kingstown, they all use the Civic Plus. It just makes doing things from an administrative standpoint a little bit easier, and I think they're more friendly to visitors that come, and it's a pretty good layout for people to find their way around and find what they need to find quick, rather than just getting frustrated and not being able to get what you need. So like I said, I looked at all the other towns, they look nice, and yeah, I think it's the way to go with the Civic Plus, and it will also be a better way, I think, of controlling the agendas. Our agendas and minute page right now kind of scrolls down to the bottom of nowhere, and you got to kind of do some good digging to come up with what you need to find. So I think it's going to be a better plan for that as well. So, but they'll take care of everything for us. And at that time, we can transfer our domain over to the .gov domain. We can kind of make those two projects together. So we cut over to the .gov domain as well as upgrading our web host. And they said that they would take care of all of that for us. So right now it's kind of like things are kind of just pieced together. The guy who designed our website, I think, is retiring this year. So, and it's just a basic website. So anything from Civic Plus, I think they're offering would be a good deal.
Thank you, Chris.
That's great. That's terrific.
Some nice pictures, update a little bit, pretty good. Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
Chris, one quick question on that new website hosting service. Do they have a, does it have the capability of providing like document repositories where we can, create a publicly accessible document repository?
I believe it does. I would need to check with the guy. I can shoot him up an email tomorrow and see if they do have. I don't know if that would be a different service, and it might increase the cost a little bit. Because basically the one that, he looked at our website when I was going over with the representative from the company, and he said, we don't need too much. So we pretty much just got their bare bone quote for the new website, but I can see if they do offer some sort of like a, some towns use what's called clerk base. I think I know in Richmond they do, and that's, like document services. But like I said, that's another cost. So let me check with him first thing in the morning, and we'll see what we can do.
Great. Thank you. What was the name of that service?
Civic Plus, or the clerk base is the one that.
Civic Plus is the main hosting service.
Is the web host, yep. And it's a different product, that clerk base. So I believe if you go to Richmond, they use clerk base. And it basically, I've seen it, in other towns where, you can even go as far as to stream your town council meetings with all the documentation provided. So, you can watch the meeting and have access to an agenda right in the sidebar. But like I said, that's an expense that we haven't had in the past.
Sure. Okay. Thanks.
Everybody good?
All right. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, so that wraps us up. Do you want to see if Joe?
Yeah.
I think he's got.
Joe, go ahead. Just state your name for the record, please.
Hi, it's Joe Moreau, Old Depot Road. Chris just mentioned something that was alarming to me when I heard this. And I know I spoke to Alicia concerning the COVID-19 vaccinating program for our town, and she's doing a great job with the voter registration. Is that information backed up at all as far as where we stand with the residents, who has had their vaccines, who hasn't? If that's not backed up and we ever lost that, that would be a real big hit to the residents, especially the older residents of our town at this point. So I think Chris and I would both.
Most of that is cloud-based. So I believe they're storing the data in the cloud for that. So we don't risk anything happening to it locally.
Okay, great.
And
Chris,
it's-
you'll make me sleep better tonight. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And that
Thanks.
document's shared from myself, Ron, and Alicia. So it's backed up basically on all of our computers. So like Chris said, and centrally it's stored on the cloud, so. I
That's
think we're
great,
covered.
thanks.
All right, any other questions for Chris?
No, not here.
Just a thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Joe.
You're
All
welcome.
right. You guys have any other questions for tonight? That was the last department for tonight. We can serve.
I mean, unless there's any follow-ups on any of these, I mean, I know you have capital improvement down there that just kind of like carried over stuff.
So that basically, it's when what we do is it has to be on the agenda in order for us
Okay.
to discuss
To
it.
discuss.
So
Okay.
we put it on every workshop, and then
Okay.
when there's an item on the CIP, I bring it up when the department is here to discuss it. So for example, like the IT one we just did, in order for us to be able to discuss it, we threw it on there. That was advice from our solicitor. So that's kind of how we've covered our bases there. So we've basically discussed everything on the CIP except for the police vehicle replacement, and that will be on Thursday when the chief's here.
Okay, excellent. Lisa has her hand up here. Lisa, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Hi.
go ahead, Lisa.
I know that Jim Lampier had his interview earlier, and you needed to ask him a few more questions, and potentially we will have him on for the 25th as well, which means that I have to amend the agenda tomorrow. So we'll be in touch with Jim first thing in the morning to make sure he can make that meeting on the 25th.
Lisa, this is Brian. I don't know that I mean, this is your call. Absolutely. You're the expert. But we do keep that last item of other departments, agencies, and budgetary matters on there, I think kind of as a catch-all. So you might be okay without amending it.
Okay, I just figured it's worth a shot mentioning because we just want to be careful.
Okay,
Okay.
sounds good.
Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right. Well, with that said, does anybody have any other questions for Brian? All set?
So
I'm all
the
set.
last thing I would suggest is just that we say the last workshop, we'll spend some time at the end as like kind of like a recap, and we'll go over the tax rates, tax revenue,
Okay.
and all of like because these are kind of the pieces that build up the budget. So I think it makes sense to kind of work through some of the lower hanging fruit, the smaller items by department, and then at the end, kind of bring it all together and look at it from a whole.
All right, sounds good.
Works for me.
Okay, with no other comments, I'm going to close the workshop. And we'll see everybody on Thursday.
Yeah,
All right.
Okay.
Excellent.
Thanks, guys.
Have a great night.
Good night, all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.